Welcome back to Life Group News. I'm your host, Travian Weems. This just in, looks like we have breaking news. Reggie is trying to get into the baptistry. Make sure I'm reading that correct. Yep, Reggie's trying to get into the baptistry. All right, Jeff, take us to the next camera. Let's see what's going on. All right, I don't see, oh, there's Reggie, okay. Oh, hey, Reggie. Reggie, let's not go, yep, that's what you call a baptistry. Let's not get in there. That is where you baptize kids. Yep, you take them and you dunk them. Exactly. Hey, he's got the form down. All right, well, yep, no, Reggie. Uh-oh, looks like, folks, Reggie has now officially gotten over the tub. Reggie is trying to climb over. No, Reggie is in the tub. Reggie is officially soaked. I repeat, Reggie is officially soaked. Reggie, don't drown. All right, well, folks, Reggie is wet. He was trying to get into the baptistry. What? Why? Don't do that, kids. Baptistry is where it's like the place where you get baptized. And if you don't know what that is, baptism is what you do after you get saved, after you make that decision to make Jesus Lord of your life. You go and get baptized as a proclamation to everyone around you and to God to say, God, I want to be more like Jesus. I want to follow him. So you get buried with Christ in baptism and then raised to walk in a new life, just as Jesus did when he didn't stay dead. That's what baptism is. So if you want to get baptized and go to the baptistry, don't jump in like Reggie, but get baptized. Talk to your mom or dad, and talk to Brother Shay, talk to a pastor. Now back to the regularly scheduled program. Today we're still going through the question, who's in control? Well, let's do a little bit of review. We talked about creation. God created everything. He created Adam and Eve. They were supposed to be fruitful and multiply. But what did they do instead? They decided to sin and disobey the Lord. They ate of the fruit. They took a big old bite. Then they were kicked out of the Garden of Eden. And they had two kids, Cain and Abel. Then what did they do? Cain, right on Abel's head. Then later on, we see this guy named Noah came along. Noah built this huge old ark because God told him to, because it was gonna rain. Rain, what's that? It hadn't done that ever. But it was supposed to rain a bunch, and it flooded the entire world. Noah built this huge ark, 2 of every animal came on, and they were saved. Him, 8 people, him and his whole family, saved because of God's provision. Then after that, we see this guy named Abraham, which is what we talked about these past 2 weeks. Big old character in the Bible. His name's Abram, later changed to Abraham. He was given a promise, a covenant by the Lord. The Lord said, if you go to this land, I promise that you and your family will be a blessing to the whole entire world. Abraham hadn't had any kids, but God said, your kids will be as numerous as the stars. As we talked about in week 1 of Life Group News. Have you looked at the stars recently? Because I've tried to count. Let's just say I didn't get it past 1 million and there was still more to count. It was absolutely crazy. Then last week we talked about Melchizedek. Melchizedek. I got it right this time. Melchizedek. We talked about him and how he blessed the Lord and he was a righteous ruler. And he was a priest and a king, which is the first sign of Jesus that we see. But today, the big story, we have God provided Isaac. Isaac was technically Abraham's second son. Abraham actually only ended up having 2 kids, but God still fulfilled his promise with their kids and their kids and their kids and their kids. But Isaac was Abraham's second kid. His first kid, he didn't really believe God's promise, so he went to one of his servants and he ended up having a kid with her. His name was Ishmael. Then later on, he ends up having Isaac. But keep that sin in your mind. But today, if you have your Bibles, let's flip to Genesis chapter 21. In Genesis chapter 21, it talks about the birth of Isaac. And it says in verse 1, the Lord visited Sarah as he had said, and the Lord did to Sarah as he had promised. God keeps his promises. That's a big key thing to look for. We'll keep going. And Sarah conceived and bore Abraham a son in his old age at the time of which God had spoken to him. Abraham called the name of his son who was born to him, whom Sarah bore him, Isaac. Isaac was the kid's name. Later on, we see they're going about their day and they're walking, Abraham and Isaac are walking, and God told Abraham, bring your son up to this mountain in which you were blessed by Melchizedek. Same mountain, pretty crazy, but he told him, bring him up there and I want you to give your son as a sacrifice. Whoa, that can't be right. Hold on a second. That can't be right. I gotta read through this. Nope. After these things, God tested, chapter 22. After these things, God tested Abraham and said to him, Abraham! And Abraham said, here I am. And God said, take your son, your only son, whom you love, and go to the land of Moriah and offer him there as a burnt offering on one of the mountains of which I shall tell you. What? God's promised Abraham a bunch of kids, but then he goes and has to sacrifice his only one? This is crazy. But this was a test to test Abraham's faith. Abraham said, here I am. He was willing and ready, so he brings him up to this mountain. And then what happens? He builds an altar, and Isaac's like, what's going on? Where's the lamb? Where's our offering? And Abraham's got a knife. He ties up his son on the altar. And Abraham, I'm assuming, pouring his eyes out, he looks up, he's like, all right, God, I trust you. And right before he raises up the knife, right before an angel comes down, he says, wait. There's a ram over there in the bush, caught by the horns. Use that instead of your son. God spared Isaac. Abraham was tested, and he faithfully served the Lord. And Isaac was spared. This is also a representation of Jesus. Jesus came and he took our own death as we were supposed to die because of our sin, for the wages of sin is death. But Jesus came and died in our place. He was the ram. Jesus is the representation of the ram as a sacrifice for us in our place. And if you accept that, you believe that, and you believe that he rose again on the third day, you're saved. As the Bible talks about, you're saved. You get to go into heaven and join. And I hope and pray that you take that choice. But as today, we go back to the main question, who's in control? God was in control this whole entire time through testing Abraham, knowing good and well that he would provide for Abraham, bringing his son up to the mountain and sacrificing Isaac. Now Abraham, he had another kid, Ishmael, and if he wasn't willing to follow God's promise then, will he be willing to follow God's promise now? The answer is yes. And I pray that you follow God's promise and trust God, that he's in control, and you follow him with whatever you do. That's Life Group News for today, and I'll catch you next week as we talk about Jacob and God wrestling with Jacob. See you next time.